You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Well, we're drawing near to the end of the season, so today's show and next week's, the last until September, are really memorable episodes, and I hope and trust you will like them. I have been wanting for some time to focus the spotlight inside on the women of the Women's Media Center. These are the people who staff this remarkable 18-year-old organization under the helm of the wonderful, ever cheerful, ever miraculously efficient, ever lovable Julie Burton, who will be with us in just a second. We're doing this look inside across a 2-week span, and each show will run a bit long because, well, it deserves to. I mean, we're talking about news, books, internet speech, youthful feminism, women in conflict crisis areas, women as expert sources for other media, climate action, Spanish language access, media training, analyses, activism, networking, communications, and more, much more. These women are in the midst of transforming a global media, which is saturated with commerce, competition, and structural patriarchy, into something never before encountered, because it never before existed. Genuinely free media, where half the human population, women, are actually visible and powerful. And since media both defines and reflects all our communications and all our ways of being, this is no small thing. Not only is the staff of the Women's Media Center diverse, but it isn't waiting for someone to tell us we ought to be. On the contrary, the organization has set standards for diversity of race, ethnicity, geography, age. Staff ranges in age through the 20s, through the 50s, you name it. And naturally, that's reflected in the content and style of the media it offers. I'm proud, for example, that for 2 years straight, this program, Women's Media Center Live, has mothered a subseries on Native Americans, and then expanded it to include Indigenous women around the world, all under the advisory direction of a board member of ours, Rebecca Adamson of the Cherokee Nation, who is also founder of First Peoples Worldwide. But that's just one example out of so many. The quality of WMC's work is highly professional, yet also it's as dedicated and passionate as only feminist commitment can make it. So, instead of going inside the headlines this week, we're going to begin with an overview of the organization in a conversation with its president and CEO, the remarkable Julie Burton. And then we're going to go on with a panel of the first 4 staff members. In other words, we're going to go inside the Frontlines. For more than a decade, Julie Burton was on the front lines of the women's movement as the youngest CEO of a national pro-choice political action committee, Voters for Choice. She was the founding executive director of Choice USA, now called URGE, Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity, and she's worked to advance opportunities for women at leading advocacy organizations, including People for the American Way and the National Women's Law Center. A former commissioner on the San Francisco Commission on the Status of Women, she served on the board of journalism's, the Women's Leadership Board of the Harvard Kennedy School, Women and Public Policy Program, the Lillian Lodge Copenhagen Center on the Advancement of Women in Communication, the New SIM Power Shift Advisory Board, women at Paley, at the Paley Center for Media, the Feministing Advisory Council, the National Advisory Committee for the Institute for Women's Policy Research Status of Women in the United States, the National Abortion Federation Board, and is a trustee of the Stuart R. Mott Foundation. Since becoming president of the Women's Media Center, she hasn't stopped. She's a blur of light. She established the WMC Media Lab and is the creator of a wide array of WMC's signature reports and research programs, including the widely referenced Women's Media Center's Status of Women in U.S. Media report. She's also co-executive producer of the award-winning Women's Media Center Live, this very podcast with me. And she oversees WMC's online and on-air journalism channels, including WMC Features, WMC Women Under Siege, WMC F-Bomb, WMC EDAIR, WMC Climate, Speech Project, as well as She Source, Progressive Women's Voices, and Women's Media Awards, which is an annual celebration of champions for women in media. I could go on and on raving about her, but best you hear from her herself, Julie Burden. Julie, welcome to Women's Media Center Live, my dear. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to be on Women's Media Center Live, and I'm very grateful that you're featuring the Women's Media Center.
Well, it's bloody well about time. I think in maybe 5 years ago, something like that, I think I did a version of this before, but never so thoroughly. And of course, at that point, it was also 10 years ago, whenever I did it, it was not what it is today. And so much of that is your doing. I congratulate you. I'm in awe. So let's start with you and a kind of an overview of the organization. It's 18 years old now, which is quite young considering its scope. But you take it from there.
It is 18 years old. The mission, as we say regularly, is to make women visible and powerful because we want to see more women, we want to hear more women, and we want to read more women on all media platforms. And what we're talking about and what every program here is working towards is really an issue of power. Mm-hmm. Because you can look at power in politics. We need more of that. You can look at legal power in the courts. We definitely need more of that, and legislative and policy power. But for us, we are focused on media power. And it's huge. And I don't know that the world thinks that much about how much power media has, both economically, culturally, in shaping who we are, right, what we say, who gets to make decisions. All of that is about power. So we work every day to change the face of power, to change media consumers so they recognize media power and its impact and their power, and that we hold media to account. And we have multiple strategies. We could call them buckets, big buckets that we work from. One is we focus on monitoring media. So we show you what you don't see and what you should see. Uh-huh. We train women through our WMC Progressive Women's Voices to be effective in media. And through that, we're changing the face of media. Uh-huh. We create original journalism from talented women writers who are telling women's stories and modeling inclusive feminist media. And we investigate and document the status of women in media to hold media accountable, to equip academics and activists mm-hmm. with the evidence to push for change. And all of these interconnected strategies work together to move our agenda forward, to try to have a media and a society that equally represents the 51% of women.
It's so impressive. I mean, as a founder, I didn't even really know until I began focusing on Women's Media Center in this week's and next week's podcast, how it had changed, how it had expanded, how much how wide its reach was, how much the interconnectedness of the various, let's call them desks, you call them buckets, that works too, interrelate. I mean, for example, let's say you're a person wanting to be active, wanting to be in media, and you're vaguely a feminist, and you don't know what. And let's say you come and you're lucky enough to get into the training program. You get trained. You get trained in everything from how to write a press release to how to hold a press conference to how to deal with media to how to turn their questions into your answers, etc. Let's say you graduate from that but have nowhere to go. You can go into SheSource and become one of our extraordinary list of remarkably reliable and solid and well-known experts on every subject, including all those subjects that for years they said we can't find qualified women on. Let's say your particular passion is climate. Well, we have an app for that, like they say. Let's say you're very young and you're not sure how to maneuver in this world. Well, there's the Young Feminism post, the F-bomb. Let's say you don't have English as a first language, but it's a good second language, but there's a Spanish language channel for that. Let's say, I mean, you can see how I go on and on and on. Every subject, let's say it's internet related. I mean, never before has media been needed to be held accountable, given AI, given so many things. You have to have some trustable source somewhere. And I mean, Julie, we're it.
Well, I'll tell you what we started with when I joined in 2010 and where we are now, which I'm really proud of. And it has happened because of this team that I work with and our board and the support for any venture that we go after. I truly feel the Women's Media Center is a laboratory for effective change and impact, and we prove it every day. When I joined, and I'm so glad I did in 2010, we had some funding challenges. That happened. We had trained about 100 women leaders to be effective in media. We had this SheSource database, this brain trust of women experts from every field. However, when we tried to add a new profile, the whole thing would crash. So we needed, a major reboot there.
You think?
And we had one journalism channel, WMC Features, which is a fantastic channel. But since then, we have greatly expanded our scope and thereby our impact. We have no debt. We have trained over 500 women leaders, and 66% are women of color. They are featured regularly in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. Just some examples. Some of the most phenomenal graduates of our training program. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Mm-hmm. She was trained when she was running an organization on immigrants. Maria Teresa Kumar, who is the president of Voto Latino and is now an MSNBC contributor.
Right.
Fatima Goss-Graves, who is the president of the National Women's Law Center and the head of the Me Too Legal Defense Fund. Zerlina Maxwell. And then you look at the Women's March. 3 of the 4 founders of the Women's March went through our Progressive Women's Voices program. The training program is incredibly effective, and we have expanded that. SheSource has now 2,000 experts. It has incredible technology and you can search in different languages. It has 584,000 search sessions every year. I think that's 1,600 a day. It's huge.
God.
It's being used by students, by academics, by journalists, bookers, producers. It is fulfilling its mission. On our journalism channels, we continue to have WMC Features, which is our anchor and our inaugural journalism channel. But we have WMC F-bomb, which is for younger feminists. We have WMC Women Under Siege, looking at international issues and sexualized violence. We have WMC Climate. We have WMC I Dare, which publishes in English and in Spanish.
Right.
We have WMC Live with Robin Morgan, an award-winning podcast.
Oh, that one.
And we publish or air 250 original stories, 5 every week.
Wow.
And so that's incredible journalism, and it's all modeling inclusive, representative feminist media.
Yeah,
We have a research program, which I am especially proud of, our Women's Media Center Media Lab.
You started
do
that, didn't you?
report-
You founded that, yeah. Oh, God.
It was started as a brainchild of mine because I was trying to prepare for speeches. I was trying to prepare for writing proposals, and I was like, where are the steps?
Yeah.
Can someone tell me how women are doing? And, it was very difficult to have everything in one place. And so we created the Status of Women in U.S. Media report.
Yep.
And it includes original research that we do on the 4 major news platforms, whether broadcast and cable, the wires, online, and print.
Mm-hmm.
But it also includes many reports by academics and other organizations throughout the year. So we're trying to pull together in one place film, television, news, technology, radio. It's your one-stop shopping for information, and information is power. So
It sure is.
I'm really proud of the reports that we do. We did a report this year, a 17-year review of the status of non-acting Oscar nominations for women. So these are the people, only 4 awards are acting awards in the Oscars.
Right.
The rest are all behind the scenes,
Right.
the creators. And in 17 years, the progress for women is still slow. Men over the last 17 years have received 78% of those nominations. Women, 22%. There was some change and some bumps and some progress that came after 2017 when the Me Too movement was,
peaking,
elevated to a whole other media level. And there was attention being paid to Hollywood because there were so many abuses being uncovered in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And there was some change. And combine that with the Black Lives Matters movement and the Stop Asian Hate movement.
Right.
They all impacted what was going on there. So we saw some rise, but again, it's coming back down again. But it proves, and having this data proves, that these campaigns and having the facts can move the needle.
Well,
and it did move the needle, and we gave people something to work with.
Well, and also you bore down into more detail in some cases, many cases, like the report on writing rape, how U.S. media cover campus rape and sexual assault. Who thinks to do that? Well, we do. And the WMC Media Watch, the gender gap in coverage of reproductive issues. People do a double take when they hear that because they think, what, you mean there's a gender gap on that coverage? Also, the Women's Media Center Guide to Gender-Neutral Coverage of Women Candidates and Politicians. I mean, it's in other words, there are the general reports on like women, status of women in U.S. media. But then, and these are, by the way, they're all available online from our website. People should know. And they're available for free. So this is extraordinary.
Every time we do a research effort, it's really all hands on deck. Different people lead at different times in being in charge of these reports, but it is a big project, and there are lots of pieces to pull together, and really the whole team comes in and helps on these reports. And one of the reports that I'm especially proud of was a report we did a year ago on the top Sunday news programs. And it was incredibly important because it showed that in a year covering the top 5 shows, the guests they had nearly 1,700 guests in the span of a year. 68% of them were men, 32% were women. And what was truly illuminating when we looked at Latinas, they are 9% of the population. they were 2% of the guests over the span of a year.
Ugh.
For Asian women, they were fewer than 1% of the guests over the year. It was mostly white men who were getting the exposure. And I have to say, the impact of this became very clear to me, because I know the producers of the shows and the directors and the network leaders. They look at our reports. They pay attention to them, because our reports really have generated a lot of respect.
Yeah.
But the fact that Kristen Welker is about to take over the press.
I was just going to mention that. I'm taking credit for us for that. I think that's your doing and the staff's doing, and that it's all this working behind the scenes. And it's such a source of glee for me that Chuck Todd is going and Kristen Welker is coming in, a woman of color, and Meet the Press, breaking the Meet the Press ceiling. Bravo.
And the network, thank you. And the network press release saying she's the right person at the right time. And they know that because we keep putting out the data, letting them know what's happening in this time and what is not. And she is just a big victory, and we're very excited about that. The Status of Women in U.S. Media report has been sent by the U.S. State Department to 150 embassies around the world. So that is impacting global meetings and presentations and gatherings. Academics are teaching from this every year. They are pulling down the full report and teaching from it. Editors and producers I know are doing better. I was at a cocktail party with someone at the Washington Post, and she said, I found some people I wanted to hire, and they were women, and my editor said it wasn't good enough. And I said, oh, there were no women of color? And she's like, yes. I said, well, we can help. We can send some suggestions to you. This is good.
Oh, this is wonderful. This is just wonderful.
The reports have impact. Thank you. And, there was a report we did a few years ago, which got enormous coverage. We actually did 2 reports, but they were on science fiction in film.
Right.
We did a 10-year review. And we called it Superpowering Women and Girls in Science Fiction. And the numbers were just so skewed, and there were so few. It was just tiny women who'd had the opportunity to have a voice and to be leaders and to be heroes of their own lives. That book, no, I don't know that anybody's done anything along that front. And I think the research that we followed up with that, we did that in collaboration with BBC America, was a polling review of girls and boys and what they would like to see. And for the young ones, there's a hunger and a thirst for more superheroes who look like them.
Of course. And there's a span that the reports cover for all the way from graduate school academics to ordinary folks and activists who still want that information. I mean, Unspinning the Spin falls into that category, which is now online and up, and is the world's first, in English at least, Women's Media Center Guide to Fair and Accurate Language. When people say, well, fireman, but there's no other word. Well, there is, firefighter. I do think so much of this is due to your leadership and is due to your vision for what this could be. And next week, after we do the second panel of 4 staff members, following on this week, next week, I'm going to ask you at the end of the program, before we break for the season, to talk about visions for the future, which both scare me and excite me more than I can say. Will you do that?
I'm excited to do that. Thank you.
All right, then. Okay, well, then it's time to move on to the rest of the Women's Media Center, the first 4, what we're calling the first 4, and we'll be back in a moment. So that we can run these segments this weekend next with no interruption, we need to take a brief pause now and then come back for the first 4, their introductions and their voices. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Here are some of the women of the Women's Media Center. They are our first panel this week, to be followed by another panel next week. So, Julie Zeilinger edits the feminist post, the F-bomb, for the WMC. F-bomb standing for feminism. And she is the editor of MTV News. She is the author of the book A Little Effed Up, Why Feminism is Not a Dirty Word, which came out in 2012. She was named as one of More Magazine's What the New Feminists Look Like, and she was named in Forbes Magazine's 30 Under 30 Media in 2016. Tiffany Nguyen is the program manager at the Women's Media Center. Tiffany oversees the research on our Emmys and Oscars reports, the entertainment industry, and works on our WMC She Source and on WMC Progressive Women's Voices training and leadership programs. So we'll get to hear about all that this week and next week. She graduated from UCLA with a BA in English and Media Studies, and while there she completed a research project on representations of LGBTQ people of color in film and television. And since graduating, her focus has been on media representations of marginalized communities, which, as we know, is not always very good news. Then there's Lauren Wolfe, an award-winning journalist who has written for publications from The Atlantic to The Guardian. She is the founding editor of WMC Climate. Previously, she was the director of WMC Women Under Siege, covering women in conflict centers and crisis situations. And she was a columnist at Foreign Policy magazine. Before that, she was senior editor at the Committee to Protect Journalists, where she broke ground on the issue of journalists and sexualized violence. And before that, she spent 3 years at the New York Times, covering September 11th. Action on Armed Violence listed her as one of the top 100 most influential journalists covering armed violence. And Crystal Williams-Chancellor is Director of Communications for the Women's Media Center. She is responsible for media communications and for generally raising the visibility and profile of the organization. She leads the planning, development, and production of many Women's Media Center reports, including the signature report, The Status of Women in the U.S. Media, and The Status of Women in Color in the U.S. News Media 2018. The reports have generated extensive media coverage, including stories in the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, ABC News, BBC News, and the Associated Press. Crystal was part of the Akron Beacon Journal team that won the 1994 Pulitzer Prize Gold Medal for Meritorious Public Service for A Question of Color, a year-long series that focused on race relations. And prior to coming to the Women's Media Center, she worked nearly 12 years at the American Society of News Editors, now the News Leaders Association, a premier nonprofit leadership organization for the nation's top editors. Here they are, the four of them, Julie, Tiffany, Lauren, and Crystal. Welcome. It's very lovely to shine the spotlight back on all of you. Welcome.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
I think I'm going to start with Julie Zeilinger. And you will remember, listener, that she is the founder and is now the editor of the F-Bomb, the feminist blog, which is specifically aimed at younger women. And Julie, I want you to kick off this whole thing by talking about the F-Bomb and talking about younger feminists and, well, in a sense, the desk that you run at the Women's Media Center, how you run it, what kinds of writers you look for, what kinds of pieces you're proudest about.
Well, thank you so much for having us all on, Robin, and I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you. I'd be happy to tell you more about the F-Bomb. So I actually started the F-Bomb way back in 2009 when I was a teenager myself, just a little WordPress platform that I created in my bedroom as a teen feminist in Ohio, looking for a community back when we still use the word blogging, and blogging was a sort of new phenomenon.
Right.
And I joined forces with the Women's Media Center in 2014, so almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
It's been a while. And the F-Bomb has always been, as you said, a blog for young intersectional feminists.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of it has always, we're happy to put out the blog posts and the sort of the musings of young feminists, but it's always really been more about the process itself and sort of giving young feminists often their first bylines and sort of ushering them through the process of publishing their thoughts. So we've been doing that for over 10 years now. And the F-Bomb is open to submission. So it always has been teens. We often work with high school students, college age students, but are flexible with the term young. Anyone who feels young at heart or has something to say. We often publish older women, older people of other identities who have something to say to younger feminists as well. So it's open to submissions. Anyone can submit a piece. We also have an editorial board, which has been rotating over the years, but is a board of young feminists, usually high school and college age students, who agree to consistently publish. So they'll publish one post every month. So those are sort of the avenues through which we have our writers and sort of gain our content. And so I don't really tend to direct the content as much as the editor. I haven't written myself since I was a teenager. I've sort of ceded over the platform to younger writers. And as now I'm my ancient age of 30 years old, I don't dare tell the younger women when younger writers.
Oh, no, of course you're
an old feminist.
You're an old feminist.
No, but but I have to say, it's been really interesting, working with Gen Z in particular. I mean, I try to sort of cede the floor to them and rather than dictate what they're writing and give assignments, just see what they're interested in.
Oh, what are they interested in?
Although I do often.
What kind of things?
I mean, there is the sort of stereotypical things you think Gen Z might be interested in. So we've written about, TikTok and trends on sort of emerging social platforms and how these new social platforms have affected their lives, which is always really fascinating to me as someone who started this blog when Twitter was still new and Instagram had just started. There's, Gen Z is sort of defined by the way social media has impacted their life. So I always think that that's interesting, but they're also interested in the issues that, sadly not that much has changed in a lot of ways since I started the F-Bomb.
I know.
We have a lot of, it's interesting to see how we go through certain phases in content, but teen girls and mental health, we've seen a lot of reports recently about how bad teen girls' mental health is. And I'm glad it's getting more attention. I feel like that's consistently been an issue and one that writers have written about for the F-Bomb over the decade plus it's been around. But we still get that. We'll still get posts about body image issues, especially as it intersects with emerging social media platforms and how that affects.
Now that one stays around decade after decade after decade. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously been a ton of progress too on that front.
Oh, sure.
Body positivity, but it's still we still have photoshopping and all the photo editing apps. It's still a problem. But then there's sort of period poverty and a demand for free period products has been a huge issue, especially as other countries have been making progress. We've covered, Scotland became the first country to offer free period products.
No, bless
young
them.
women. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And young women, I think, are looking around, or any young person who has a period, and are saying, why don't we have this? So we have a lot of posts about that, and just sort of raising awareness about period poverty and how that affects a lot of young women's education.
Yeah.
I'd also say young women's education in general is a huge concern, especially in Afghanistan. We have a post that will be coming out soon from a young woman in Afghanistan, or from Afghanistan. I believe she's in school here in the U.S., about just, her experience growing up, and how the Taliban has cracked down on women's education, and how disheartening and heartbreaking really that is for her to see. So the topics really run the gamut.
This is wonderful.
We're very international in our reach too.
I'm very glad about that. And I am so proud of what young women are doing. And their kind of take no prisoners attitude, starting with the Women's March and even going back before then. But I mean, during the Trump years and since, I'm just so delighted. And the internationalism is a sort of a part of it. So bravo, Julie. I mean, this is fantastic. All right, I'm going to move on to Tiffany. And Tiffany, of course, is the program manager at the Women's Media Center, and you oversee all the good glam stuff. But seriously, the research on the Emmys and the Oscars reports, and I think you also work on SheSource and the Progressive Women's Training, don't you? Women's Voices. So tell us about your work, Tiffany, and what it is you do and why you do it and what you're proudest of.
Hi, Robin. It's really nice to be on here, and thank you for the invite. You did a big summary of everything I did. So I mainly work with the WMC SheSource program on an everyday level. I work really closely with Kate McCarthy, and every week we do this newsletter to journalists and just cover different stories and send out sources for journalists to use in their stories and all that. And it's just really nice to be able to work on something like that and really try to elevate women's voices in that type of way. And that's my little every day. I mean, it's not little, but
it's not little at all. Let me tell you. I mean, we have survived so many years, decades of them saying, well, we would have them on, but we can't find qualified women. Ha, ha, ha. And it would drive us stark raving insane. And now we can, of course, point to SheSource. And now we don't even need to. Well, we do, but we don't need to because they know that you exist and they go to you, don't they?
Yes, they do. I'm the one that looks at the emails and see the journalists coming in, and it's really nice to see how many people are using SheSource. So it feels very rewarding because I have been working on SheSource for 7 years. So it's nice to see how much it's picked up since I started.
Gosh. And you network them with the speakers, which of course are up online and in their bios and their areas of expertise. You network them with bookers on various shows, so And also, I've been very impressed by the way that you keep up, as they say, with the news, because a story breaks overnight, and by 9:00 the next morning or even earlier for the morning shows, SheSource is on it with experts on whatever, Ukraine or the latest shooting in the United States, which happens every 15 minutes, or whatever. How do you do that? How do you keep up with it that quickly?
I basically just look around on a bunch of just news sources. If I see some stories beginning, I keep track of what the Supreme Court might be doing. Sometimes I scroll through Twitter and TikTok to see what people are starting to talk about. And it's just a lot of spending time online, seeing what's picking up.
I also learned something about SheSource I hadn't realized in a recent interview with a guest on this podcast, which is that she said she goes to SheSource to locate and get in touch with other women in her field And they have formed a number of subgroups, and they're working toward forming an international group. She's a sociologist. And that kind of blew me away because I hadn't thought of it that way. I was still thinking of it in the traditional way of getting women and women's voices and faces on the Sunday talk shows, in the newspapers, getting quoted, etc., so they wouldn't say we can't find qualified women. But these are women using it for networking.
Yeah, I didn't actually know about that, but it makes sense because we have so many experts in specific areas, so it's a great resource to just find women in very specific topics.
Yeah, and it must be a source of tremendous pride too, because the women that are listed on SheSource just boggle your mind. I mean, talk about experts. Gee, Lauren, my old friend Lauren.
Hi, Robin.
Hi there. You are now the founding editor of Women's Media Center Climate. This is after having done Women Under Siege, and having been a columnist. And so talk to me as if we, particularly in my case in New York, you're in Seattle, we had orange air here last week. So the climate beat is a pretty alarming one, isn't it?
Being a New Yorker and moving out to the West Coast, I had never smelled wildfire smoke. And now we go through days of summer where, there are a few days where I don't like to leave my house. You keep yourself sealed in. It's devastating. And doing this project for the Women's Media Center has really opened my eyes a lot.
Yeah.
And especially to the fact that women are really bearing the brunt of gender climate injustice.
Yes.
Climate injustice in general is affecting people of color, women, the usual suspects who are just not given power or allowed in power in the world. So we'll take into account also that women, bear children, and there are severe effects on pregnancy of, not just wildfire smoke, but disasters in general. People don't have access to emergency services in those cases usually. Birth defects, premature birth, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in general, women tend to die at greater rates during disasters, surprisingly.
Really?
Although maybe not surprisingly. Yeah, so in the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, women died at 3 times the rate. And actually, in this particular case, it was due to the fact that more men than women actually knew how to swim. And that, men are more privileged. They often are able to be in places that women are not. It's like if there's poverty and disparity, then there's
women's
climate
misery,
injustice,
and
women, women's misery.
Yeah. Oh God, I hadn't thought of that. That men.
But to be okay, how about something positive?
Oh God, yes, please help.
There is a remarkable trend of women land defenders, as you mentioned, around the world, really taking the lead. We're still not really in the policy rooms that we need to be in general, but Indigenous women in Mexico or in Indonesia or, Indigenous women in Brazil,
the Amazon,
see whether you see women who are Indigenous or just native to a place, and they are really taking the lead in protecting their land because often they're the people who know it best, who work it the most, like you said. Oftentimes women are the farmers even.
Sure.
Well,
80% of the farmers on the African continent are women, so that tells you.
And they don't own most of the land.
No,
so
of course they don't. No. And the same thing in India. So it's in that sense, it's not a surprise. My God, you jumped from being the director of Women Under Siege at the Women's Media Center right into climate. You choose a lot of easy and light subjects, don't you, Lauren? I mean, God, gee, wow. I mean, and then,
I don't like, I don't like injustice. So if there's something we can do about it, and the Women's Media Center is such a unique place to be able to do kinds of things.
For you, yeah. No, and it's vital work. It's extraordinary work.
Although it is all linked in the sense that also climate disasters cause women to be more sexually targeted for exploitation, sexual violence. Like there is also that element.
Oh yeah, of course. Because I mean, if we're gonna go and kill some land defenders or water defenders, and then we find out they're women, why not rape them first? So, it's patriarchy is remarkably consistent. Where do you get your stories generally, and tell me which ones you're proudest of, if you can choose?
Well, we do. Interestingly, we get a lot of pitches from the Indian subcontinent. We also get a ton of pitches from Nigeria, and I'm just so excited by all the great young journalists who are sending these stories in. And I don't know what it is about these two countries, but that's where a lot of pitches are coming from.
Not to complain.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
No, it's fantastic. A lot of women in Kashmir, actually, because they're very concerned about the Himalayan mountains and the runoff that is destroying agriculture and the melting of the glaciers. So also, just being immersed in climate studies and news, and the thing about this sort of part of climate and justice, it's not terribly covered in mainstream outlets, but there are NGOs and occasional projects where there are big reports put out. So it's really something that's it's not emerging. Maybe it's a little past that point, but it's still not covered quite enough.
I know. I keep yelling back at my television set saying every time they cover, well, they had to do this when the air turned orange, but I mean, but every other time they cover an unusual hurricane, an unusual tsunami, an unusual heat wave, and why don't they say, and this is climate change, this is climate change, this is climate change, folks? And of course, they're beginning to tiny tiptoe around the edge, but not yet. So we become a major source, I think, at the Women's Media Center for that voice, loud and clear. And clearly you're ringing it out. God, it's that's the thing that scares me the most. I think we can do it. I think we can pull off women's revolution. I think we can change the world. But the question is, can we do it in time, given the clock of the planet ticking? So, well,
very true.
Crystal, so give me some good news.
Well, Robin, it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you and with Julie Z and Tiffany and Lauren. But I am really excited about where the Women's Media Center is and the work that we do, particularly with communications and the reports and the research. I recently traveled to Brazil and have been to India as well to talk about women in media. And I am always delighted to find out that the Women's Media Center not only has a reputation here in the United States for trying to promote gender equality and racial equality and all of the stories that we do about representation and inclusion, but also just around the world. When I was in Brazil, they talked about the Women's Media Center and how they wanted to have their own Women's Media Center. And particularly, Robin, they were especially happy with Women's Media Center Live. And they're, I think for the women there who were not aware of your program, they were, because there was a woman who just talked, effusively about your podcast, about Women's Media Center Live, and how it makes a difference. So I was just really proud to be part of Women's Media Center and continue to be very happy with the work that we produce.
Well, I mean, the reports, which I know that you shoulder, are really, amazing. I mean, the status of women in the U.S. media, which comes out regularly, the status of women of color in the U.S. news media 2018. I mean, it goes on and on. Talk about the new one, the status of women executives in the Black community.
Yes, and I am very proud of the work that we've done, both on the Women of Color report, the inaugural report that was in 2018 that looked at women in news media in general, and the report that we are producing now, will be out soon, will spotlight women of color news executives who are in leadership positions. And these are like the CEOs, the presidents, the publishers, the senior VPs. And while we recognize that those numbers are very small, and that those numbers need to be much higher, that those women still are in order to reach those positions, particularly as women of color, has a lot of challenges and a lot of hurdles that they've been able to accomplish. But they also are role models for how other women can chart a path towards making sure that they're in decision-making leadership positions.
Of course they are. And the more that light is shown on them, then the more of them there will be. You know, it's just that simple.
Yes, it is. And the women that we're going to spotlight in the report are across all the platforms, whether it be print, TV broadcast, radio, and also digital. And some are younger executives, some are older executives, but they all are really in positions where they direct the news content. And as we all know, what people see in the media really makes a difference in their perceptions and their information that they can absorb.
Of course.
Just to kind of throw out a few names of the women that we're spotlighting. Janelle Rodriguez, who is the Senior VP of News for NBC News. Leona Allen, who's a Deputy Publisher at Dallas Morning News. Swata Sharma, who is the editor at Vox. So we have some of the leading women who are in those seats of power, who can share not only how they got to where they are, but also some of the wisdom to bring along those who are still in the pipeline.
Oh, this is fantastic. I mean, and what I love about this also is that to initiate something and then be consistent with it is very different and is what we really need.
Yeah, and I also, it's what I think that the Women's Media Center has, as you described earlier, Robin, in its infancy, had created, to be an organization where it talked about, had original content that maybe wasn't already in mainstream media, to talk about, how to hold the media accountable, how to make it more inclusive, both in terms of race and gender. And so we do that, with the reports and with the research, but also as Julie Z and Tiffany and Lauren mentioned, with all the other various platforms that we do, we try to make sure that we have stories and other content that you wouldn't see anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's through composed, which is a musical term I learned years ago, which means that a composition has consistent elements that keep occurring throughout it. And it's through composed, this politics, in that everything is put through the same grid. So if it's climate, with you, Lauren, you're looking at women of color. You're looking at women of LGBT community. And if it's young women, and if it's, it doesn't matter what it is. It is all consistently with the same focus, and that focus is spread across different emphases, and that is golden. That's our dream for this organization come true, and it's not easy also, I know.
And actually that was, one of the reasons that the Women's Media Center was attractive to me, originally, and when I came aboard, was it was a good combination of things that I'm very passionate about, women and people of color, and making sure that there is representation in media. And so we do that on a daily basis, recognize that there are not enough women of color in media, and try to make sure that those voices of those women is included in everything that we do, whether it's SheSource. And I know Tiffany can talk more about that and how we make sure that there are women who are very diverse in everything that we do across SheSource, whether it's the spotlight and features or just making sure that there's a good representation of women experts.
And that's another thing that I've learned, about a year ago, is that in academia, the reports are just, it's like people are reverential when they speak of them because there's such solid scholarship behind them. And nowhere else can you find.
And particularly.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say particularly, and thank you for mentioning that, Robin, particularly with our status of women in news media report that we do every 2 years or so, which is a compilation of all the research across many fields and from many organizations and research companies. And it spotlighted 110 reports that we did in our last 2021 report. But it is, as you said, used in a lot of academic classrooms and even newsrooms use it. So we're just really proud of the work that we produce and how it's making an impact both in newsrooms, classrooms, and just really trying to hopefully bring about some more conversation and more information that the public can then be aware of not only the work we do, but also just some of the disparities that are in media.
Yeah, that is priceless. I mean, the reports have given birth to extensive media coverage. What excites you most about each other's work, or do you not have time to spend that much time on it?
I think as a journalist, I'm always so excited by SheSource. And I also teach journalism students now. And
wait a minute,
every
who is
semester
this? Wait, who is this?
This is Lauren, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay, right. Go on.
So I'm teaching at NYU, and I use SheSource, and Kate has come on to speak to my class. And, they're made aware of how large the disparity is of voices that are in stories. I'm very aware sometimes I'll get to the end of reporting a story as a journalist, and I've used too many white male sources. Uh-huh. Sometimes it's an excuse where the students will sometimes say, well, that's all I could find. And then I say, nope, right. Hold on a minute. So I really think SheSource is very valuable.
Oh, this is so fantastic. Well, next week when we have
Kate.
And
this is Julie,
sorry.
This is Julie. I was going to say, I also, I frequently use SheSource as a freelance journalist. It's an incredibly helpful resource. And I'm also really excited about climate. Excited, but depressed when I read it, but excited that it's being covered and such an important issue is being covered from this perspective as well. It's kind of wild that something so important and that's already impacting so many of our lives is still so undercovered in the mainstream media. So I'm excited about it and grateful for it.
And this is Crystal. I was going to say that Tiffany referenced and just kind of made a quick discussion about the Oscars and the Emmys report. But those two reports are two of the reports that get a lot of media attention, where we talk about women who are behind the scenes in the Oscars and the Emmys, and how they, of course, are not enough, particularly as directors and producers. And Tiffany, who's an expert, in her own right, and she knows so much about entertainment media. I learned a lot about her expertise and the Oscars and Emmys reports when they're produced. So I always look forward to those reports that we produce every year.
Well, I'm just in a great glow here. Were you about to say something, Tiffany?
Yes, I was just going to turn it back to Crystal and just say I really love the reports that she works on, because I like she said, I do the Oscars and the Emmys, but the status reports that Crystal do is such huge reports that mine just feel like I just started managing reports 2 years ago. Yeah. So it's just, I know how hard it is, and I just see how thick and how many pages the status report have that I admire Crystal so much for being able to juggle that.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, folks. This has been really wonderful. We could do it twice as long, but next week we'll do 4 more of the staff and get into even more issues and refer back and forth. But my gratitude goes to Tiffany and to Lauren and to Julie and to Crystal for all the brilliant work that you do year-round. I mean, as one of the founders, I'm very proud. I'm not a young feminist anymore, God knows. And I have the battle scars to prove it. But and all of us, Gloria and Jane, are excessively proud of you. and of Julie Burton, and of the whole operation that you've managed to do, and the fact that it keeps growing and keeps expanding and keeps being even stronger and even more uncompromising. So I congratulate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you for being on Women's Media Center Live today.
Thank you, Robin. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Robin.
We have to take another short break here, but don't go away, because in just a moment I'll be back with a surprising and quite important fighting word. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
We can't have healthy people on a sick planet. Those are fighting words. This week, in fact, I'm turning over fighting words to my dear sister and friend and colleague as a co-founder of the Women's Media Center, Jane Fonda. She sent me a typescript of a speech that she gave recently to the City of Hope in New York on the 8th of this month, and it is remarkable. She comes out of the closet and talks about having been diagnosed with low-grade B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and the chemotherapy experience, and how she fought that, and of course, being Jane, wow, managed to come through. But she most importantly connects the dots between having gut cancer and the environment. This is something that the great stateswoman Bella Abzug tried to do decades ago, but nobody would listen. Jane delineates it chapter and verse, how the people living near toxic spills, for example, have skyrocketed rates of carcinoma. How the children, well, you get the point. I won't go on because it's better for her to say so in her own voice. And she'd never given a speech before this at the behest of a hospital or any medical institution, but she came because her cancer experience made her grateful, and because City of Hope was a comprehensive cancer center. But she was also there as a climate activist, my dear Jane, and she talks about those connections. So we don't have it on tape for you to listen to, but if you go to www.robinmorgan.net, you will find it as of tomorrow up on my website. And it is dynamite. And for today, those are my fighting words. So you can add yours on Twitter. And remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at The Robin Morgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live, executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor Regina K. Scully, WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.